Hi, I'm Howard Lieberman. This is episode 19.1 of Harvesting Infinity, and this segment is called Genre Busting. And it's about the fact that music is not staying in its lane. You know, there are string quartets that play chamber music, and there are country bands, there are country musicians playing metal, and there are electronic musicians doing soundtracks. It's all over the map. So this particular segment, I decided to use something between a samba and a bossa nova. I haven't actually heard this drum track before. I synthesized one up and stored the waveform, and now I get to sort of play along with it without knowing exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, except my piano vanished. Okay. So that piece is actually called Just Say Vivi, which has to do with reminding you that what you're doing is valid and valuable. And the music in the background, the drummer, that was at 60 beats per minute, and it was some kind of bossa samba. But the original song is really at more like 110 beats per minute, and it has a vocal line, and it sounds completely different than that. But the challenge as an involuntary innovator is to be walking on this tightrope and balancing as you lose it and then you have to straighten out and you get... So this keeps life interesting for me. I have to figure out how to play with different drummers, and in the 8 segments that I'm going to record today, I have 8 different drummers and 8 different genres. And that's because I called this first one Genre Busting, because it's my intention to do everything from samba to funk to jazz fusion to swing, and to talk about different topics for each of these. So let's come back to the genre busting thing. If somebody wants to make it as a musician in the world today, it's very different than it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, you were sort of like in one style, and that was the style you did. Not anymore. If you can only do one thing right now, unless you're one of the best in the world, you're not going to get gigs doing it. So the genre busting made really easy because we have YouTube now, so we could all listen to many, many different styles of music instantaneously, and that's really cool. So nobody's staying in their lane, everybody's changing their genres, and in fact I have a concert coming up with 8 composers playing 8 different styles of music. In fact, it's local at Dewey Hall on October 3rd, and another house concert on October 4th. 8 different Juilliard composers, including me, playing 8 different kinds of music and somehow turning that into a show, which doesn't bump people out because they're expecting one style of music. I don't know if people are expecting one style of music anymore. At least it's my thought that audiences need a change of pace, not doing the same thing all the time. So I'm going to model that today. Now, let's talk a little bit about classical music versus other kinds of music. In classical music, that genre is one that's kind of score-driven. Classical musicians don't just like wing it. They are generally reading music from a score. And it gives them a little bit less freedom to improvise. And most classical musicians don't improvise. They used to 200 years ago, but the composers became control freaks and started specifying what all of the soloing was about. It used to be in the Baroque period that when you got to a bar line with a repeat sign, you went back and didn't play the exact same thing again. You played a variation. Bach didn't ever play the same thing again. He was a great improviser, as was Beethoven and Chopin and all the rest of them. When they got to a bar line, the thought was, okay, now go for it. Do something different. Don't play the same thing twice. Here it is 200 years later, and in a lot of genres, the assumption is when you get to the bar line, do the same thing. It's not true in jazz at all. In fact, if you get to the repeat sign and do the same thing over and over again, you get fired. If you're not improvising, you're not a jazz musician. So this whole genre topic is really interesting because it generally takes a lifetime to become good at playing any style of music. Never mind being able to float between them. You sort of get considered to be a weirdo if you're playing a lot of different styles of music. On the other hand, you're far more employable because you can be in a lot of different situations. And I think I'm going to play this out, a little bit more of this same samba, and see if I can do something completely different with it. These are the same chords.